house. There we go, much, much better. Wow, this is my first time here at the Los Angeles Comic Con. I'm normally presenting at the San Diego Comic Con. Anybody goes to San Diego Comic Con? Yeah? It's huge, isn't it? It's crazy. Well, we got a lot to talk about today. I'm Stephen Burns, and I'm here with my friend and artist partner. Actually, Nikolai is the. Actually, let me ask this. Anybody using Adobe products at all? No, I don't remember. How about any of the Photoshop products? Any of the 3D products, like Substance and all that stuff? He's the lead programmer for Adobe. So if you have any questions about that, he's right here. All right, there's supposed to be 3 of us here on the panel. There will be a 3rd person who couldn't make it today. His name is John Eves. How many Star Trek fans do we have here? A lot? Okay, so anybody watching the what's the new, the Brave New, what's the new one called? What was that? No, not Brave New, Strange New World. Anybody watching the Strange New Worlds? Okay, that's John Eves. He'll be here tomorrow. So he's the one that actually designed the Enterprise that you see, the new one that you see in Strange New Worlds. And many of the other ships in the show. All right, so welcome everybody. This is our panel in terms of, it's going to focus on creating environments, or my personal workflow for creating environments. Now let me ask you guys this, what are you doing, what are you doing with Blender? Let me ask you that. Just shout it out. 3D printing. 3D printing, what else? What was that? Okay, VR advertising, okay. Cool, anybody else? Yes. Modeling? What type of modeling are you doing?
I do a little bit of sculpting and hard surface modeling.
Okay, hard surface and sculpting.
Yeah.
The tools in Blender for hard surface and modeling are outstanding. Anybody working in ZBrush at all? You're gonna, if you are, you're gonna love the tools inside of Blender. I'm gonna let my friend Nikolai introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he does for Adobe.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikolai. My social handle is Nikolai3D at many popular social networks, but not that one. Yeah, I work. I'm a software developer at Adobe. I'm not an artist, but I really like to talk about roughly what we do there. And I've been actually doing 3D at Adobe for almost 17 years now. Believe it or not, there is a full 3D engine right into Photoshop. We started from about 8 years before when we created the 3D layer. And we got you had like a lot of 3D rendering capabilities right there in Photoshop. So I worked on that, and right now I work on several technology transfers, research, and things like that for Adobe 3DI, which is Adobe Substance Suite. So speaking of modeling, if you're talking about ZBrush, you're talking about Blender, I'm like contractually obligated to apply for Substance Modeler. Please try it out. So that's, I pretty much work on all the apps since I work on different technology transfers. So, they do let me out of my basement once in a while, so you can
All right, well, I tell you what, why don't we go ahead and have some fun. I'm a 3D artist, I'm an author, I teach at several colleges, in Studio Arts, Golden West College, Coast College. I've taught at Otis College Arts and Design for about 3 years. And I just love this whole thing with digital. I started off as a photographer, as a professional photographer in the 80s. That transitioned to Photoshop, that transitioned into 3D, and here we are today. Blender is outstanding. Right now, I'm teaching for a school that's specifically designed to transfer their skills to other types of software packages. That's what Studio Arts does. In other words, most of my students are Maya artists, professional Maya artists, seasoned Maya artists who are now transitioning to Blender. Okay? So why is Blender so popular? It's not because it's free. It's because it's literally revolutionizing the 3D industry. And we're going to explore some of that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of a workflow concept here. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit of, let's go over here and see if I can find, there we go. So John Eves, the concept artist, sent me images of what he designed for the Paramount's show. This is for the Picard show. And he said, Steve, this would be great, kind of, build this model. Now, John Eves is not a 3D modeler. All this is done in Photoshop. It looks like it's almost 3D design, but it's not. It's all done in Photoshop. He knows nothing about 3D. In fact, I'm forcing him to kind of start learning Blender. And it's scaring the daylights out of him. So this is what it was I decided to kind of design. So what today's presentation is going to be on is like a concept, from concept to creation, right? So John Eves is the concept artist. He sends me the two-dimensional work. That's what you're looking at right now. And then I go and I make it into 3D and create the environment for it and all. Okay, so he used Vasquez rocks, actual photographs of Vasquez rocks, integrated with his digital paintings inside Photoshop. Okay, there we go. So this should be familiar. If this is not familiar to you, this location, then you need to start your Star Trek pilgrimage. Very simple. This should be number 1 on the Star Trek pilgrimage map. So if you've ever seen Arena from the original Captain Kirk series, then you know what this is. Okay, so I'll just share a little bit more of what John does. This is some of the Nomad concepts from the original series. So the Paramount contracts them to come out with different designs of different ships, and they decide what to show or to change it, or whether or not to include it in the show at all. But this gives you an idea of what his skill sets are. All right, so let's go play. Let's get inside of Blender and go play around. All right. What I would like to do is I'm going to share with you. Let me go back to the concept. There we go. So I'm going to share with you what I did to create this scene. We're going to start with building the mountain landscape, and we're going to watch me do it. And I'm going to show you a nice, fast way to go about it. There's so many different ways to build landscapes inside of Blender. And I'm going to show you a way I think you guys can leave this room today, turn on Blender at home, and just start playing instantly and start creating your landscapes. Okay? If you don't feel like that's what I'm doing, then you let me know. Okay? So let's go have some fun. All right, let's just start from the beginning. Let's go to the drawing board. I'm going to close out Bridge here because I want to conserve my memory. I'm also going to close out Photoshop. This is the final image in Photoshop. We're going to close that out as well. And now we are inside of Blender. Okay, here we go. First thing we're going to do, we'll lay down a plane. We're going to build a little landscape. So I'm going to hit Shift-A. We're going to bring in just the mesh. Most of what you're going to create inside of any 3D program is going to be done with simplified shapes, meshes, or rectangles, or cubes, or spheres. So we're going to build something from this. I need some geometry from which to build this from. So I'm going to go inside of Blender, Tab key, because we have an object mode and an edit mode. Object allows us to animate. Edit means it allows us to create. I want to go create something. I'm going to tell Blender to select the face, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to tell it to subdivide this. I want more geometry here I can play with. I'm going to say, okay, right down here in the bottom, I have my properties panel for the subdivision. I'm going to say, oh, I don't want just one subdivision. Let's go to about 50 like that. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, now I have enough geometry in there to play with. So we're going to go back out into object mode. And now what I want to do is I want to start to create a landscape. So I'm gonna hold the tab key down, which is gonna give me other options, other modes to work in. Now you just saw edit mode and object mode. We have something called sculpt mode right there. So when I click it, I can start painting and creating little shapes like this, right? Isn't that cool? So I'm gonna undo that because I'm not happy with that shape, and I'll show you why. Well, actually, I'll hold off and show you why. And if I hold down the F key, that allows me to resize my brush. I'm just moving my mouse left to right. I'm also using a walking stylus, so I can actually draw and paint and actually create this. So if I paint light, it's light. If I go really hard, it goes really, really hard. And if I keep going, I start creating these little shapes in here, okay? Now, my landscape is not smooth, right? A landscape has bumpiness to the terrain and all that stuff, so I want to kind of simulate that concept, right? Sometimes I'm working with reference images. I do highly recommend that. Have a reference somewhere, whether it's photographic images or if it's actual 3D imagery that you can actually draw and paint from. But I'm going to use my imagination in this example. So I'm going to undo. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the brush. I'm going to say, let's add some texture to the brush. I'm going to come right down here to this little checkered flag. That checkered flag means add some texture. All right, so I will hit the new button. And I'll come right over here, and I can add an image or a movie, or I can add what's called a procedural, which are basically shapes, which I can create textures from. I'm gonna set the cloud, and those are my shapes. That can probably be good for terrain, right? So if I take the brush and start to paint, look at what I'm doing. I'm starting to create these little bumpiness in the terrain, okay? And I'm going to just keep pushing and pushing down. Now, if you notice, as I keep pushing down, we kind of go different directions. I'm going to start building little mountain shapes like this. So I'm going to bring it across, bring up a little bit of the terrain around the side, and I think I'll press down a little harder here. Now, if you notice, I'm starting to run out of geometry. I'm not getting the smoothness that I want to. Well, in Blender, we have modifiers. Blender is one of those 3D programs in the market where it's completely non-destructive. The modifiers what revolutionizes this program. This little blue little wrench right there means add a modifier. Well, what modifier do I want? I'll click the little button, little long single button there. Click it, and I've got a menu. Okay, I'm going to go to generate. I'm going to say, okay, subdivide it again, subdivision surfaces. So I'll select it, and look, it added more geometry, in the background. So if I start to paint, it's smoother, all right? But I'm going to go up to 3 levels of subdivision. 1, 2, up to 3. Okay, that's good enough. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to play with this. I'm just going to add just a few more bumpiness to it. I'm going to make sure I have the type of texture that I want. And I can modify this texture too. I can go ahead and bring this up. Okay? And I can play with the sizing or really make it bumpy like this. So I can change the nature of that texture. There we go. Okay, so from here, it's going to kind of play around with this. I'm going to resize the brush, F key, bring it down a little bit smaller, and I'm going to just play with this, rotate it around. Maybe this heel side is going to come over here. Maybe this back here is going to come toward the back. It can go in a lot of different ways. So now, I'm going to use a different tool. So these are my brushes right over here to the left. Right down here in the bottom, I have one called Grab, and this grabs to a point. So if I select it, I can grab these and start pulling up the peaks of the mountains. But even with this, I can add a texture, right? Right. So if I come over here again, add a brand new texture, right? Come up here. I will go to clouds again. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. Now you see that shape? Look at that. You can see it right there. The actual texture is inside the brush. That's how cool Blender is. If I bring it here, I can start pulling up. See? So when I start pulling these terrains up, it's that texture is also molding it. And I'm just going to use my imagination and just kind of let it do what it's going to do. See what it's going to, you never know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter. There we go. Okay, so I'll make this one even larger. I'm going to take this one, pull it up, and pull it real large, maybe something like that. All right. Now, something else you can do. Well, if I go back to this brush here, which was the original brush, and if I hold it, that has the original texture, I can add other textures in here. I can add photographic textures in here. So if I come down here to the bottom again, and come over to the clouds and say, let's add an image, right? And I go open an image. And I'm going to go right over here to the Comic-Con, and I have what's called alpha brushes. And you take a look at them, they're images that someone photographed. There's some rock-looking things right down here, or maybe some tree bark or something, reptile skin. This is called, let's try this one, it's called rock cracks. And if I select it, it's just a photograph. Put it into Photoshop, turn it to black and white, and they put black all the way around it. That's all they did. So Blender works using the white areas are the areas that are going to come forward, going to come out. And what I'm going to do is, I think, what if I do, what I can do if I can stretch this out? No, I'll tell you what, we'll go here with this brush. All right, now I'm going to go back. I may have to go, there it is, it's my rock. So if I hit the brush, see, there's my rock. Right? So now, watch it. Now, this is cool. I'll go to the stroke. Now, if I start to paint, I'm getting that texture in there, like so. I can go to the stroke, select it, and let's go to drag dots. And I'm going to tell this strength to be a lot higher than 0.3, so we'll go like to 0.8. And if I click and drag it, I can drag that around and place it where I want. So just keep that in mind. Those are some flexibility that you have. All right, now I'm going to just leave that the way it is, and I'm going to start adding something to make it look like a terrain. Go back to your object mode, because I'm going to texture this plane. Select it. Right down here, the checkered flag is where we add all our textures to our object. Click New. Go to the image, and I guess I can go get an image and put it on there, but I'll tell you what, let's try it this way. We will get an image, we will select it, open an image, and right in my Comic-Con area, I'm going to go right to the images folder, and I think I've got one, I think I called it Coastal Sand and Rocks, that's it. All right, now this is what I'm going to do. You notice there's several different images here. One represents the color, the others represent the texture. I want Blender to use all of these images to texture the landscape. So I'm going to cancel this out, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. You have another room in Blender. We've been working in a modeling room right now. We can now go into a room called shading, which is where we texture. We're going to add a texture. So with the plane selected, I'm going to say, okay, give me a new material to that landscape. Click New. It's done. And if you look right down here, here is the nodes that we're going to use to texture image. This represents the material that's going to go on that plane. This is a television set. This little small burgundy-looking thing. That's just a television set to allow you to view it. That's all it does. Now we need to tell Blender to go get all those photographic images and attach them to the plane. I'm going to do that using a shortcut called Control-Shift-T. Now, it says, okay, where are the images? All right, Documents, Comic-Con. We're going to go to the Images folder. Make sure I'm in the right place, yeah. So we're going to go over here to the Images folder. There they are, right down here. And we're going to go to Coastal and Rocks. And we're going to go select everything. So, everything right there. Just select them all. And then I'm going to click the button to bring it in and watch what happens. Boom. Okay, so now we have, okay, that looks like a nice little terrain. All right, so, all right, that is cool. Now, what else can we do? All right, I want to add some rocks, or maybe some plants, or some weeds and stuff like that that's going to go on the ground. Well, there's this free program that you can install inside of Blender called Scatter. Grass Wall is the name of the company. I'll show that to you in just a little bit. And there may be one other thing I want to do before I do anything else, which is actually bring in a background, bring in a light background or an image that's going to light the entire scene. So here, I'm texturing an object. If I drop this down, I'm going to go texture the world. I'm going to give it another photographic image to light the background. I'm also going to tell it to view this in render mode so that you can see exactly what it's going to look like when we render it as a final image. You started to see where the direction of the light is going. You see the shadows. It's starting to make the landscape look like a real landscape. Now let's bring in something in here to actually light this scene. So I'm going to go to the background and I'm going to hit Control T, which is going to be another shortcut that's going to allow me to add an image. So, all right, here's your shader. That orange one is where your image is going to go. The rest are just allowing you to resize your image. Now, I'm going to just simply go open up, go find my HDRI folder, which I'm sure I've got in here as HDRI. I should have, and I hate that when I organize stuff and it's not the way that I organize, so I'll go back to the images folder. LA Comic Con, we'll go back to the images folder right there. Okay, let's see. And there they are, right there. And these are the background images I think I'll use. I think I'll grab that one right there. Click open, and there it is. Now we got ourselves a background around our landscape, lighting scene. Okay, let's bring in the flowers and plants, and then what we'll do is we're going to pass it on to Nikolai so he can share with you what he's going to be doing with Substance Painter to texture your 3D objects. So here we are. I'm going to add in another plane. Let's go back to my standard viewing mode here. In fact, we're going to go back to the modeling room. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another plane. You'll see why in just a moment. So I'm going to Shift A and add another plane. And I'm going to drag it on up. So there it is, nice and big. I'm going to take this plane, I'm going to reduce it down a little bit because I want the actual plants and the weeds to be in the lower valley area, not all over the mountains in this example. So I'm going to hit the S for scale, shortcut for scale, and just drag it down like so. And what I accidentally did was applied or created a plane inside the landscape object. I want the plane to be a separate 3D object. So you see here is the plane, but it's inside of the other plane. So I'm hitting the P key for part to separate out this separate part. Hit the selection, and now it's a separate part right about there. Now notice that the modifier, I'm going to go back to object mode. The modifier that was applied to the landscape originally, I'm going to drag this down, which is under your blue wrench, was also applied to this. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn it off temporarily. All right, now I'm going to take this one, tab key, edit mode, right click, and I'm going to just subdivide this. I think I'm going to do it about, let's say 50 will be fine. Make sure I select it. Okay, there we go. Right click, subdivide, and give it about 50 subdivisions. That should work just fine. In fact, that's probably too much. Let's go about 30. That's good enough. All right, you're going to see why I'm doing this in just a moment. Now I'm going to bring in some plants. Go to tab key, back to object mode. Now, I'm going to turn off the visuals to see these lines in here. It's going to work a lot better. There's my wireframe. Now, the reason I'm doing a separate plane is I want my plants to be restricted to a certain area. It's just much easier to do it to a separate object. Watch. I'm going to come right over here to this vertical menu. On the left-hand side, I'm going to scroll down the bottom. All of these menus here represent the plugins I have stored inside of Photoshop. I've got Photoshop or Blender. But right down here, G-Scatter, that's the plugin that I want. Now watch how this works. So what this does is it takes any object in your scene and will scatter it on your plane. So I'm gonna tell this what plane that we're gonna scatter things on. Take the eyedropper and click on the plane. Now it knows the plane it wants to be on. Now it gives you a library. So that's what the little the book symbol next to it right here. It's a library. If I open it up, look at all the cool stuff I've got, all the different plants and stuff I can bring in here. Let's actually grab this plant right there. Let's go ahead and select it. And let's come right over here and say, okay, now that I've selected this plant, let's scatter that plant. Click it and scatter, and then click OK. Okay? Now, with the scattering on, I'm going to go to the distribution, and right down here, the density, I'm going to add more density and get more of all the little plants scattering on the plant, just like this. So the plants are probably too big, right? So we'll go down to the scaling option, and I will go to the main, and we can just bring it down in size, like this. And then in addition, we can go back to distribution, and I can add more density in here, add more stuff. Now in addition, I can also add other stuff. I can go back to the library, and I say, okay, I've got some weed grass here, so I'm gonna grab that one and select it here. Come back, scatter that selected, and then click OK. Now I've got 2 plants in here. So I will go to the distribution and increase that. Make sure the density there. That's the distance main. So I'm going to take that down again. And there we go. So there's our additional plants there. So I'm adding more density. There we go. I can go back to the scale and go back to the main and come back and bring it down just a little bit like so. Okay. Is that making sense? So all I'm going to do next, before we go on to Nikolai, I want to show you how to attach this to the plane. So I'm going to, let's go to the, hit Tab key, go to the Z key, go to the material mode, so we can see the actual material. Okay. See, there's your plants. And what I want to do is take this and make sure that this is going to be flowing with the landscape. So Tab key, object mode, select that top object. We're going to give it a modifier. And that modifier, we'll go right over here to the little blue gear. We have subdivision surfaces on there already. I don't think we really need it. So I'm going to turn it off for now. I just got rid of that subdivision surface. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Blender to make this plane completely attach itself to the terrain. So wherever the mountains and valleys are, it's going to move, it's going to flow exactly with it. Add deform. Under the deform option, I'm going to come right down here, and we're going to find something called shrink wrap. Select it, and it says, okay, what do you want me to shrink it to? Okay, get the eyedropper and select this little plane and watch what happens. Boom. So now I get all the plants flowing. Now they obviously are too large. We're going to need to modify it, rescatter it, reorganize it. But I don't need to see the plane that it's on. I can turn off that plane. Let's go and find it here. I'm going to drop it down. And I should be able to, there it is. Now we turn off the plane and we get only the plants. So this is what I did. Basically, I scoped out the mountains, used this plug-in to bring in rocks, plants and weeds, resize them, organize them where I want them, or to place them where I want them on the terrain, and then brought in the 3D model that I built from John Eves and put it into the landscape. Does that make sense? So if we have more time, I will show you a lot more stuff. But Nikolai, yes, questions, absolutely.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Can you explain, put some clarity to why you would do it this way rather than put it directly onto the terrain?
Got it. Okay, excellent question. So his question is, why would I do it this way rather than put it actually on the terrain? It gives me more control because I can take that and duplicate it and place it wherever, and place the duplicate wherever I want it, and it's going to flow with the shape. This gives me a lot more flexibility because this program wants to throw everything over everything, and maybe I don't want everything over everything. Maybe I just want just a small little area. So it gives me that flexibility. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. Does the lighting conditions apply to the second plane as to the first? Yes. There's only one light in my scene. Well, no, it isn't. It's not true. There's one light, but there's also that colored image that we wrapped around it, right? They're both being lit exactly the same way. Was there another question or so? Yes.
About the show, is that planting later? You it sort of flat again and rearrange it and
Yep, they're right there. Just like in Photoshop, those are the layers right there. So I can turn it off, I turn it on, turn it off, I turn it on.
in the future though, if you want to edit or plan something,
Oh,
you
do-
make a flat layer again and then work on it.
Oh yeah. See, what I'll do is go to that layer, go back to the modifier, and oh, I gotta go find it again. It's down over here. I think it's that one there. I don't remember. It might be this one here. It's this one here. Okay, so we have what? A modifier called shrink wrap, right? We simply turn that off. There it is. Yes. All right, so Blender runs on Mac, PC, or Linux, and it's pretty flexible. Even if you have a computer that's not as strong as mine, it'll still run it. I've got old systems at home, old Windows 10, I forget what's the previous system, Windows 8 or something like that. It still runs. Go to blender.org, look it up. I don't know, I don't have it memorized, but it's not that much. Okay, say that again? That's right. So how good, the type of hardware you have in your computer is gonna make a big difference in how well your 3D system is going to handle large amounts of information. It doesn't, any 3D software will do that. But yeah, that's a good question. So let's go on to Nikolai. He's going to share with you some pretty cool stuff with texturing. We use Substance Painter. I'll let you talk more about it.
I wanted to address the question more. Basically, the more resources you have, the better. And but for interactive rendering, you also may want to look at the amount of VRAM you have on your GPU, because for all this interactive rendering and these 3D packages, it's going to consume your GPU resources as well as your main memory. Right. For Mac, it's a little easier because they don't really distinguish between those, but I mean physically they are different. But on Windows, if you have like a desktop machine, usually you have your main memory and you have your, let's say, NVIDIA's card VRAM, so you want to make sure that both are balanced.
Oh, yes. Oh. There's a switch. I'm going to picture that up here. But then it doesn't come all the way over to the other side. So, how many people have actually used Substance Painter? It's cool, isn't it? Isn't it? Basically, Substance Painter is Photoshop for 3D, literally. Nikolai's going to share that.
Yeah. Hello, you hear me? Everything's good? All right. So, yeah, the tools that I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be showing you the very basics of Substance Painter. But know this, that people who are doing triple A, quadruple A games, they are using Substance Painter. I'm not an artist, I'm a software developer, so I'm going to be showing we have just you know a small logistic disclaimer first. They are priced outside of the Creative Cloud. So if you have a complete Creative Cloud, those are not included. But if you go into your Creative Cloud app and you click on 3D and AR right here, so you'll see a bunch of the apps. They all start with Substance, and the main ones are Substance Painter, Substance Stager, Substance Sampler, and Substance Designer. So they all sound roughly the same. Their icons have the same color, but they are all primed for different 3D workflows. So I'm just gonna start with Painter, and the main purpose of the Painter is texturing. So one of the 3D models that Stephen gave me for trying things out was this Habitat module, and after rendering the geometry a little bit and cleaning it up, I was able to load it into Substance Painter. So before we start doing anything in Substance Painter, we need to sort of understand what the material is. Mathematically, in 3D rendering, material is like a set of rules, a set of mathematical rules of how a surface reacts to the light. And but as artists, we don't necessarily want to go into these details. We just want to put it light. So it's not that. So a lot of these packages they have more. You can apply the materials, but to get it to customize a little bit, it's much harder. So, given the painters, given the designers' familiarity with Photoshop, what Painter did is essentially implemented the workflows that like Photoshop does with layers and effects and different brushes, but it doesn't apply them to just images, but applies them to materials. But you do start with the 3D model here, and this is standard 3D view where you can move things around. And once you import it, you've got this layer stack right here, the layers panel, and here's where you start, where you need to start just throwing materials at it. So I'm just going to throw a base material first. This is going to be like a background layer for us. So, for example, here we're just.
Is that easy?
Yep.
Is that easy?
It's easy, and the workflow here again, it's just non-destructive layers. Here you create layers, and you blend them together. You can hide them. You need to make sure you name them correctly. We're naming layers, but we should. So yeah, so this is the first one. This we just went through on brush material. There we have like a preset set of materials here, and we start doing that. So, but the coolest feature, I mean, not the basic cool feature of Painter is the paint layer. And this is where the actual paint happens. So for paint, you first select you select a material to paint with, and you select a brush to paint with, and those come with a very huge variety. So for brush, we're just going to set it to the basic scribble brush. And for painted material, let's see what we have. We have let's go around. So we have brush. You see, we have a 3D brush. This cursor is basically adapts to different surface details. We'll make it a little larger, and then we just start painting.
Isn't that cool?
This is just me scribbling. This is not artistry. This is engineering artistry. This is a paint, and it's stuck to the surface, and we can look at it from the different angles and other stuff. And this is just a layer. We can type it. We can make it more transparent. Also, yes. We can adjust the color. We can adjust the that's your starting point. Let me just quickly demonstrate, again, this is just a lot of various stuff, and you can explore a lot inside those panels, but again, pick a material, pick a brush. So right now, let's go to the other brush, and
We should mention too that when he's painting, that it's not only painting the color, it's painting the bump and the reflections and all the aspects of texture being done for you.
yeah, so that's how the materials are. This is something that if we go into how the material actually works, underneath there's going to be about 5 different images updated simultaneously. It's base color, the roughness, the metallicity, and detail, the detail of the surface. It's just with the right materials and the right brushes, the workflow makes you not think about those details. You just do that. You just create the look that you want. So I'm just out of just to show you a couple more brushes here. There's a brush here called Cracks, and you can select again. We can pick a brush.
It's my favorite.
So and now we have a crack again, and another one we can do different burn effects. I mean, since this program was like Sidney said, this was Photoshop, but this program itself was conceived and created after Photoshop. So there are cooler brushes than Photoshop. There's a full physical simulations here, and I don't even know how most of them work. I just show you the ones that are. Like I said, this is like there's like what dozens, like at least 30 different brushes here. Some of them are physically simulated, some of them are just media simulations, some of them are, you can have a brush that paints like little footsteps on the ground. So it's a lot. So this is Painter, and since like I said before, what you start with is materials. You pick a brush and you pick a material. So these materials have to come from somewhere. And by default, if you install the software package, you do have a set of default materials in the material panel. A lot of these materials are they're called default assets, but not just like any Photoshop images that you have. You will have a library of your assets, and you can search. You can have starter assets, you can have your assets. So once you start working with materials, they become like you can store them in files, and you can exchange them, and you can store them with your programs or Creative Cloud and things like that. And if they are in your Creative Cloud libraries, they will show up in your assets panel. And this one, so once you start working with material, you need to do basic management of files, just like you do with your PSDs. So how do we create new materials? So where do materials come from? Again, there's default ones. There's default metal, skin, leather. Where do the materials come from? So one thing, you can go to Substance Sampler, and you can. All right, fixed it. Okay, so never mind that. So if you go to Substance Sampler and click on Substance 3D Assets, now this is just a URL that takes you to a Substance collection of materials, and this is the website that has all sorts of materials. All the materials that before creating your new material, before thinking about creating your new material, please go here and see if such material exists already. For example, here I just searched for space metal material, whatever that means, and if Wi-Fi picks up the signal, there you go. So you start to get all sorts of materials here. And so this is something that you can just download, drag it into Painter, start painting with it, or start throwing it as a background, or start mixing it. So this is the first step. One thing you can do to just start going with materials. Another way, another step, another option for you to create materials is with sampling. So creation materials by default in Substance Designer, which is very detailed, it's a complicated thing. Sampler allows you to create a material from a photograph. So you can take a photo of a surface, or you can generate it using your favorite generative AI engine, and you can create a material out of it. So I'm just going to quickly demonstrate it to you how to create it in Sampler. So I have with Adobe Firefly, I have created a gravel material. I said, hey, give me gravel. But I also can do something else. Like here is me, just give me a brush metal textures. You can take out your cell phone, take a photo, and also fit it here. Yes.
And if anybody doesn't know what Adobe Firefly is, that's Adobe's new AI generation program.
Yeah. So, and this is these are the prompts that I use. Brushed metal texture with some rusts and scratches. Now, as an AI-generated program, it could be unpredictable. Sometimes it will not. It will create like a landscape for you instead of giving you the surface. But you get the idea. By playing with Firefly or any other generative AI program, you can get it to generate such images. So what do you do with them next? You create a new project in Sampler, and you say, and you just take an image, and here is where another AI comes in. This is not generative AI per se, but this is AI that creates materials out of images. So you go ahead and you say image to material. Please give me my image to material. So this will work for a little bit. This is not the final material. You see there is a circle spinning, which means it's working. This is the AI model running, and there you have it. You have created the material. So one thing you can do is parameterize it further, because it may not correctly have guessed the category of the material. Here it says it's ground, but maybe it's more like stone. So you say, hey, it's stone. So now it knows better, and it actually creates a better material. One interesting thing that I also worked on specifically for Sampler is that depending on the quality of your image, it may not be a nice styled image that you may see in the material. Sampler can actually help you with that. Your mileage may vary, but there is this plugin here in Sampler called Make It Tile. And bam, by that you create a much nicer looking material. So once you do that, you can save it, you can send it to Painter, you can put it into your substance collection, you can throw it onto different 3D objects, you can paint with it. So with that, so that's sort of the overview of how you use Sampler to start creating your material, to understand creating to understand. By playing with it, you'll get way more insight than studying the physics of how the light interacts with the surface. By just using those apps to play with things, you'll get how materials are used and how they change the look of your message.
So do you guys think you might be able to go home and start playing around with some of this stuff? Pretty straightforward? Send it to me. I'll give you my card. I'd like to see it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Los Angeles Comic-Con for having us here. A huge thank you to Nikolai, and just now tomorrow we're going to be back. Nikolai and I, but we'll be back here with John Eves, the concept artist from Star Trek. So 11 a.m. I forget what room we're in. So 11 a.m. I'll check real quick. I've got it right here. It was right in front of me. I was just looking it up. And there we go. Okay. So we got to go to tomorrow's panel, right? It's December, so at 11 a.m. It's good. I'm glad that's early, so I can get it fast here. 11 a.m. in room. Okay, let's see. Is that it? Okay, good. So this is going to be almost there. Oops, okay, I'm not seeing it. It's in there somewhere. There it is, from concept to reality, there it is. Lemonade and room 403B. So put that on your schedule. So if you did not get one of these, a huge thank you to Magma as well. They make some online painting tools that everybody can share in the painting process at one time. They give you a 1-year license free. Grab it. Come and get it. Okay, if you didn't already get one. Any questions before we go? Yes.
A question in regards to grease, the grease pencil portion of Blender. It seems like Blender in itself it's grown so well since 2.7.
Yes.
Maya, Cinema 4D, a lot of people are switching over to Blender.
That's
So,
correct.
how you thought grease pencil was with respect to Adobe Photoshop or even Illustrator?
Okay, so his question is, what is Grease Pencil compared to Adobe Photoshop? Adobe Photoshop is not a 3D program. Grease Pencil is. That's the big difference. I mean, maybe would I say it differently or?
Well, I worked on 3D in Photoshop for 8 years, so it's a little bit of a 3D program, but yeah, not at the level of Blender or Maya. We were never set out to compete with those things, so we were just very, very basic. So what the Grease Pencil, what is it?
So basically, Grease Pencil is Photoshop, except when you're done, it's a 3D object. So you can draw and paint with Blender's Grease Pencil. Okay, Blender is not just a 3D program. It's a compositing program, it's an animation program, it's an effects program, and it's all built into one. It's now also a digital painting program. But that digital painting can instantly becomes a 3D object. So if you paint a face of like say the Mona Lisa, right? When you're done, you can take the Mona Lisa and flip it around in 3 dimensions and animate it. So that's the aspect that Photoshop doesn't do. And I don't think Blender's trying to compete with Photoshop. So you should always keep your Photoshop chops strong. Yes? Yeah, well,
I would say there's definitely some out there. I haven't used them that much, and I haven't. I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes much better, within the next months or so.
and there are plugins for Blender that will do that.
I just cannot attest to like the levels of quality or anything like that, but considering how fast generative AI develops, I wouldn't be surprised.
And one last question, and we have to get out of here.
Yeah, my last question was, you had mentioned in the beginning that you had pictures of 3D products, but 3D model size, like several times in the photo before you import it to custom. Like, is it a matter of experience you have?
It's like the models that you need to that come out of Blender need to be of a certain quality. So you can always, like in Photoshop or in any other tools, you can create something that's messy potentially. There's no uniform interchange format between them. So, but depending on on what tools you use with Blender, you should be able to export. The exact export that we used here was an OBJ file. So you just get an OBJ file, and that's how you get the geometry. You don't get any materials, but you add the materials and take it out.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's an honor.